All right, Massive Darkness enthusiasts, dungeon crawler enthusiasts, board gamers. In this podcast, we're going to look at, from my perspective of being a Massive Darkness enthusiast, from my perspective of being a completionist, a very dangerous thing to be. I can't help myself. Fantasy Flight loves me because we must have everything for every given game system, even though it's so insane, like Descent 2nd Edition. I could dedicate my entire gaming career just to playing Descent 2nd Edition, and I will still probably not play through everything. But that's going to be a challenge for my descendants to deal with. Most likely what will happen there is I will have this epic gaming collection, and they'll just wind up eBaying it or whatever eBay is at the equivalent at the time. And from the beyond, standing with the gods, I will look at them and be like, you have no idea what you're doing, selling all of my stuff on there. But that's the way things go. But in terms of Massive Darkness, what is the acquisition phase? How should we push forward? We're looking at, obviously, the non-Kickstarter. We're looking at retail as it is in the moment. And certainly the core has tremendous value. There's a lot to play in the core. There's a lot of missions in there. There's a lot of downloadable content. I sometimes just assemble random dungeons and lay down some doors and try to make it to the end. So you can get a lot of core value out of that. Massive Darkness could be a part of your gaming collection for that dungeon crawling itch, that dungeon crawling satisfaction, and you might never go beyond that. And we've looked at that in the two previous podcasts for Massive Darkness, which are up on my channel, and the link to my blog underneath this kind of goes into a little bit more detail, and we've got some images and some examples of play. The next step, in my mind, is the monster packs. We've got the ratlings, we've got the lizard dudes, we've got the barbarians and stuff, and getting these monster packs is going to not only increase the diversity of the mobs and the agents, but it's going to add some more roaming monsters to the mix. You've got the Minotaur, you've got the big lizard man dude. From that perspective, it's like 2 for 1. So you're going to get more value, you're going to get more diversity when you kick down that door, and you're getting a little bit tired of seeing angry dwarfs and orcs and goblins. So it's going to offer that perspective. The other challenge is, while there is diversity in the AI in the base game with how the minions and the mobs and the agents perform, with these monster packs, I don't want to spoil it, of course, but they really excel at different ranges. They really excel with the personality of the models on there. So it's going to mess with your strategy a little bit. It's going to really kind of offer not only replay, but it's going to force you to readjust. By forcing you to readjust those tactics with the characters in the base set, you're now going to get additional replay, not only out of the missions, because they're going to spawn differently, not only out of the roaming monsters, because they're going to work differently, out of the core characters, you're going to get more differently. So I would aggressively pursue those first. The next piece that I would look to acquire is the tile set. The Crystal Caverns tile set. Now, this is a little bit interesting because it's the base tiles. It's another copy of the set of base tiles, which might be good to have a backup on there, especially if your gaming group likes to spill things. Despite the permanent ban on drinks, no one seems to ever follow that. My copy of Massive Darkness is in good shape. My copy of Zombicide Black Plague, which is painted, I actually had to purchase a second copy just to have on the Fritz gaming shelf because we've played Black Plague so much. It's beat up, but that's a good type of beat up, right? A game that's gotten beat up and that has gotten hours and hours of play and memories with your gaming group and your friends, that's worth the price of admission on there. So maybe there's that perspective. The Crystal Caverns gives you another campaign to play, some more adventures, but it's only 2 new tiles. So you might want to consider the price of what you're looking at. The reason why I say this is next in the acquisition, I feel where Massive Darkness really shines, both as a solo play or kind of as a group based on the time, is just to kind of roll up a random dungeon. Good old D&D. Yeah, there's a story. Yeah, there's a campaign. Yeah, we're Lightbringers and we're getting the artifacts and we're doing whatever. But sometimes you just got to go out and slay and grab some loot, right? We want to build that glory. We want to go back to the inn and have that bard telling the tale and stuff. So there is value in just, and I've done this with our gaming group, where we're going to play for a few hours and we're going to have players drop in and out at any given time. So someone might die and then a new player steps up and we get rid of the life tokens and just kind of, you can revive and just kind of play things out on there to the end. Or we play hardcore. If you die, you generate a new character, or you start over as a new character with the party. There is value in being able to assemble a large random dungeon on there and just going into it and see, can you make it to the end? See how legendary, see how much you can level up for bragging rights. Having a second copy of tiles does this, opens up that opportunity. Yes, you can do that with the base core tiles, but that diversity, I feel, adds perspective, plus you're getting the Crystal Caverns, plus you're now moving on to another campaign on there. The next piece, at this point, I feel would be the additional character packs. Now, this is a little bit seductive because you get some new characters, and on top of it, you get a new kind of boss, wandering monster, minion, leader, whatever we're going to, the big guys on there, on the table on there. The challenge here is the non-Kickstarter characters, and I love Massive Darkness, but I'm being honest, they're okay. There's one or two that really stand out that seem fun to play, but they're, despite having different classes and slightly different class abilities as you spend experience, they're all kind of the same as the base characters. Now, certainly if you're a completionist, you're going to get to it. Certainly if you envision yourself playing with more players, it's going to be like a 15-player, 10, 15-player Massive Darkness dungeon romp for the evening, and you want to kind of fill out some of the character packs. Yeah, you can go in that direction. But I feel like in terms of a priority list, getting the extra minions, agents, and mobs, getting your tile pack, and then working on the character packs. Now, the extra wandering monsters, they're interesting. There's a few really interesting ones in there. But in terms of diversity and the probability of them spawning, I mean, certainly you could stack the deck with ones that you want to play. When I play Massive Darkness, I roll everything into it. We get what we get. You already have a good group of bosses and wandering monsters in the core. As you add in the reptile dudes and the rat men and kind of the berserker dudes, you're going to get more of those roaming dudes in there. So it's going to kind of build as it is. The final side piece that you want to get a hold of in some capacity, in some way, I find this helps visualize the game. 3D doors. I use the Zombicide Black Plague doors for it. It helps a lot. It really does. You could use some sort of resin type doors. For a while, I had my crossover. I was using my Dungeon Saga doors on there, but then I realized having the ability to open and close them to show which rooms have been explored, which chambers have been activated, makes things easier in that certainly the tiles look great, but in some of the dungeons, and if you branch out and have big games and big dungeons, there's a lot of miniatures spawning. There's a lot of miniatures moving around on there. And being able to plot out where you're going to move and how you're going to get out of there, and being able to see that, at least with the doors on a 3D level, I find helps tremendously. So that acquisition in some form, I won't say it's first, I won't say it's in the second batch or the third batch, it's a parallel batch. At some point, getting those doors, even if you just have core, even if you're not going to go beyond core, it helps tremendously. So from that perspective, that's the acquisition phase. Worth mentioning, as of right now for this podcast, for this vlog, we're looking at early September 2018. We don't have additional dice yet, which, I don't know, seems kind of a little bit weird. Certainly, I would put having a second or third set of dice, especially since they're customized dice, up there. It helps kind of facilitate play, having one set of dice at one side of the table, another set of dice at the other side of the table, if you're playing a bigger group. So this way you can build your dice pool and roll everything in a timely manner. That would be helpful. And certainly waiting for the elementals. That pack, I don't know what it's going to be yet, but in terms of their stats and what they do, because I wasn't part of the Kickstarter, but I'm really intrigued to add those elementals to the game. So certainly we might have to interject. That might be up there with purchasing additional monsters or maybe the first or second acquisition phase. Your thoughts, those of you who are retail, Massive Darkness, those of you who are completionists, those of you who are in much deeper than you care to admit on there, what would be your acquisition phase for Massive Darkness?